What's up, guys? Johnny here. Welcome back to the channel. Today I got something really excited for you guys, especially those guys who are looking to get into FPV, looking to get into drone racing, maybe you're just starting out and have a budget to kind of work within. And I had Banggood send me these in. These are the DYS Samguk 2600 kV 2207 motors. The idea of these motors is that they're basically very inexpensive, high performance, good durability motors, or at least that's the claim from them. These motors cost just $10 a piece, and they promise specs which in theory can compete with the motors that I've been running on my 4S build, and that's the EMAX LS2207 2550 kV motors. So the idea for today is I'm going to take these here, put them onto a 4S quad, and compare them head to head versus the EMAX LS2207 motors. Those motors run about $20 a piece, so you're looking at roughly twice the cost, and we want to see, do you get twice the performance? Is it roughly the same? Do these actually perform better, and are they a major bargain? So that's what we're checking out today. Let's take a closer look at these motors, get them put onto a quad, then take it out to the field, race these two head to head, and see how they do. So before we go too far, these are actually the two quads that I'm going to be working with. Anyway, this build right here, this is my Race Day Quads Mach 1. This is my primary racing frame from last year. This is actually running 4S build, running the EMAX LS2207 2550 kV motors. It's been a really strong performer, gets around the track pretty well. Doesn't quite keep up with my 6S build, but it's a really good 4S quad. This one here, also a Race Day Quads Mach 1 build, 4S quad. This time I'm running the T-Motor ready-made RC 2550 kV rifle motors. So I'm going to be taking these off the build, replacing with the DYS motors here, and then we're going to put these things head to head. They weigh about the same, they're the same frames, the same internal components. Everything will be the same, except the motors will be DYS versus EMAX. So I'm really curious to see how it works out. I'm curious to see how this test does. I'm curious if you're getting a noticeable improvement for that $10. I don't plan on doing any durability testing unless they happen to break out at the field. But I wanted to share these thoughts with you guys, let you know if they can keep up around the track. And let's check this out closer. Let's put it on and let's take it out to the field. All right, guys, so there you have the motor. First thing I noticed when I took it out of the box, actually really nice long motor wires. So that's a good thing for those of you who want to be running 4-in-1 ESCs. So if I take a look at this quad here, if I was to run this with 4-in-1 ESCs, I got more than enough length here. I could probably even run 6-inch, no problem. So that's a really good sign. I always prefer when they give you more wire than less. I can cut off whatever I don't need. So that's a real good sign. Overall, the look of the motor, I think it's actually a pretty sharp looking motor. I'm pretty happy with the way it looks. If I flip it over, what I will show you is that there's actually a little bit of air gap there, if I can kind of zoom in on you. This does not look the same as the EMAX motors. It's a pretty good air gap, but it is noticeably bigger than the EMAX. I also notice it has a little bit less notchiness, but I don't really know if the notchiness is a good thing or a bad thing. The other key thing to point out is that it does have a C-clip. I definitely like it that motors have kind of moved away from that these days. I do like the set-in screw because I can take it out, replace the bell much easier. So that's a real nice thing, but for $10, I'm really not going to complain about too much. All right, so this one here, this is the EMAX motor that we're just kind of comparing it to. I don't know if you can really tell here. If I put them side to side, all right, anyway, if I put these two side to side, hopefully you can see that there is a noticeably less air gap inside the EMAX motors than there is with the DYS. That less air gap should give more performance, but it also comes with a caveat that in crashes, it'll make these motors a little bit less durable than the DYS. Usually having less of an air gap is one of the reasons that DYS motors tend to be more reliable, more durable, last a longer time. So that might actually be a good thing for a lot of guys, especially if this is your first quad just starting out with racing. We'll see if it actually works out in the field. The other thing I noticed is that some of these windings don't look ideal in the DYS. So let's see if I can find it here. So yeah, if you look at this winding right here, you can see it's a really short winding. Doesn't look quite like the other windings. It's all kind of pushed over to one side. Not quite like I expect to see from most motors. But yeah, hopefully it doesn't make big of a difference in racing. So we'll get it on the quad and just see how she performs. All right, so real quick before we put it on the quad, let's get a weight on these guys. So we're weighing it with all of the motor wire. And so a key thing to keep in mind is with the light series, the LS series EMAX, it does have these thicker gauge wires, the 18 gauge versus 20 gauge. So just keep that in mind when we get a weight here. So there we see 35 grams on this motor, 35, 36 grams. If I compare that to the DYS motor, comes in 34 grams. So honestly, this is probably a slightly heavier motor, but they're roughly the same, but noticeably lighter wires. So really about the same weight, shouldn't make a big difference. There we get 35 grams. So I'd say these two are probably the same weight. The noticeable big difference is once I trim down the wires, the EMAX is probably a little bit lighter.
In the stillness somewhere above, the city lights, you're falling in love. Still aware, you know it is true, that you are lost and this is a clue. Love is forever, love is forever. To believe you gotta let go. Light as a feather, light as a feather. Lucid dreaming over Tokyo. Love is forever, love is forever. Gotta let go. Love is forever, love is forever. Gotta let go. With the music still in your ears, you're on your way to conquer your fears. In this dream of your own desire, there is someone calling your name. Love is forever, love is forever. To believe you gotta let go. Light as a feather, light as a feather. Lucid dreaming over Tokyo. Love is forever, gotta let go. Love is forever, love is forever. Gotta let go. To believe you gotta let go. Lucid dreaming over Tokyo. Just close your eyes, and when you wake up, you know what you need to do. Just close your eyes. Someone's been waiting for you. Just close your eyes. Just close your eyes.
So we just finished up our testing the DYS Samguk. So we just finished up the testing the DYS Samguk 2207 2600 kV motors. I did a little bit of testing here. I like to do a practice round where I put 3 gates together, do quick snap turns, and then do split S maneuvers. I do that primarily because I kind of struggle with snap maneuvers, keeping it in line, and then also just keeping those split S's really tight. A lot of the tracks coming up, especially the regional finals for multi-GP, are implementing those sorts of elements. So I want to make sure I get some of that practice in. So I thought that'd be a good test to compare my EMAX LS2207 motors compared to the brand new to me, DYS 2207 2600 kV motors. So what I'd say from doing that is I'm actually really impressed. I could tell that there was a difference when I was running the EMAX motors. They seem to have just a little bit more pop. They had a little bit more power, maybe slightly more control, but it was all very slight things. And I felt super comfortable going around the track in either configuration, either with the EMAX or with the DYS motors. I actually switched back and forth between different batteries, and I was completely comfortable no matter which one I chose. They felt super similar, really easy to control. I liked it a lot. What I'd say is that, you know, I'll put some side-by-side comparisons here for you too, of the two running side-by-side, so you can see about how they're comparing to each other. And what I'd say is that the way it felt to me is that these DYS motors would not be the reason why I'd lose to someone who's racing this setup here at the EMAX motors. That's pretty remarkable to me for something that costs $10. I think these DYS motors are really a cool product in the marketplace. At just $9.99 per motor, you know, you can spend $40, get a full setup like this on a quad, and have performance comparable to something where I spent $22 per motor. I think that's really good. I don't think these will last quite as long. I did notice at certain times I could hear the bearings kind of screeching a little bit maybe, so maybe that'll be bad for long term, but it did not impact the flight at all. I tested the motors every time they came down. They were never hot. They were always very cool to the touch. They're very well controlled, very easy to maintain, flew really great around the track. I was really impressed. For a quick comparison though, I did put on my standard racing quad, my 6S Monster, I guess, and I did put that on the field to test against these, and that setup there, that would be a case where I would lose on a track with this versus racing a quad like that. So there are definitely better configurations, better quads, better overall setups, but that's a whole different beast. Everything is better on that quad. This is my exact racing quad from last season. If I was racing these motors last season, I don't think they would have held me back at all. And so I guess what that means to someone who's doing a little bit of research on what they want to buy is, if you're starting out and you want to get into racing, you want to race 5-inch racing quads, I think these motors are a fantastic choice. They're super cheap. You're going to break things when you hit things too hard. It keeps the hobby relatively cheaper for you as your barrier to entry. And then it takes a good, year, 2 years of really practicing before you get to the point where maybe you're outgrowing a setup like this. I feel like I'm at that point now, but I don't feel like until now that ever would have been the case. So I think these are a fantastic choice. I also think they'd be a fantastic choice for some freestyle motors. That little bit of larger air gap is probably gonna make them a little bit more durable to impacts. They're a little bit more efficient just because they don't have quite the same power. So really, I think they'd work really well for your first freestyle quad as well. I think they're a fantastic choice. I think we're extremely lucky to have such an economical, affordable option for motors these days. I mean, good job DYS. I did not expect they'd stamp quite as well as they were compared to these EMAX motors. So I'm really happy with these things. I also had a chance to put through some laps on the MultiGP 2018 regional qualifier track with this setup. I only got a few batteries in, but it was performing reasonably well. I noticed that I did have some laps around 22 seconds. That's a pretty good time. That's a respectable time when you get 6 laps. That's probably faster than most people are getting out there on the regional track. So really, I don't think this thing is going to be holding most people back. I think you're looking at the top, 5% of racers where this just will not cut it. But for most guys out there just getting started, I think it's a fantastic choice. I'd highly recommend these to somebody to check out for a cheap, inexpensive racing motor, cheap, inexpensive freestyle motor. Would I pick them up and put them on my racers? Probably not, but I think they're a good choice for most pilots. Anyways, I want to show a big thanks out there to Banggood for sending these in to me for testing. Very impressed with them, really happy with them. If you want to check out these motors, if you're looking for a motor like this, I'd really appreciate if you check the affiliate links down below. That really does help me out in my channel. And yeah, guys, just want to leave you at that. Fantastic option, really impressed. And as always, I'll catch y'all next time. Peace!